And here we are with Father once again, Mr. Mike McGann. So, okay, Dad, so now we're into 1974, just finishing up, or actually completed your IFR training in 1974. So, I want you to tell us about that year from what you can recall, and your logbooks had told you and all that.
Okay, well, I started the IFR training in February and spent most of that summer and part of the fall. I finally got signed off, I think it was August of 1974, IFR training, and then from there I did a couple of business trips around the state of Washington, and then at that time I was working for a company that had a plant up in Vancouver, so I made a trip up to Vancouver in, I think it was November, and did some business, and then had to file IFR to get back into Bellingham. The weather was pretty lousy, and then flew IFR out of Bellingham into Hillsborough. And as I came into Hillsborough, airport was very busy, and I ended up at the Hillsborough VOR in a holding pattern for 25 or 30 minutes while they cleared me for a ILS approach into Hillsborough, and I flew into that and set up. And on the way down on the ILS, for the first time ever, I got vertigo, and that's when you're kind of leaning over in the plane, you're trying to keep fly level through the ILS, so I got this vertigo terrible, but I stay focused on the instruments, and I break out at about 400 feet and land the airplane. The interesting thing about that is that's the one time I've ever in life ever got vertigo, and my cerebral cortex decided they didn't like it, and that cured me of that in the future. And I spent many thousand hours, not thousand hours, but hundreds of hours in IFR flying. And so that was that experience. And then, which reminded me of a situation which I should have mentioned in an earlier version of this, but back in my VFR days in the old radio, and then flying into Texas. And I think I was in the Tri-Fisher, but I'm not sure. And it's in Midland, Texas, or in that area, and there's 3 airports in front of me. It's a beautiful, clear day, and 3 airports in front of me. So I go on the VFR sequence and frequency 123 and call the airport up and say, I'd like information on the runway and situation. No response. So I said, oh, okay, well, I'll just go on to the second airport. So then I called the second airport up and got a call back and said, oh, the airport just called. We're experiencing runway 16 is open for VFR approach. Go ahead. Says, okay. So I line up for the second airport there. I'm on a wide base, right base to the runway. And I noticed a 737 landing in front of me. I'm like, I'm not saying it's interesting for a GA airport. So I line up and I get on the final for the runway and notice, well, it's runway 17. Well, that's close to 16, isn't it? I mean, 17 and 16 could be a magnetic thing. So I land the airplane, fine, and then the guy drives out in a thing and has say, follow me, and I followed him up and parked, and he gets out. And he says, the airport tower wants you to call him. Uh-oh. Tower? This is a controlled airport. I landed without a clearance. He says, so go into the FBO. So I go into this FBO. They have a class going on. All the students are around there. And in the middle of the classroom is this post with a phone on it for me to call the tower. Oh, that's embarrassing. So all the students are looking at this dumb guy who just landed without a clearance. I call up the tower and say, oh, I thought I got a clearance from the airport. My wife must have given me the wrong frequency or something. Yeah, I blamed it all on her, and they laughed, and that was the end of that. But that's the whole Tri-Picture days, I think. And so, anyway, got all back home, and later on that year, we got back from work and noticed an interesting thing. Okay, I come back from work and I drive into my driveway, my next door neighbor, and I look over there and there's a tail sticking out of his swimming pool. And so I go over there and guess what? Well, my other neighbor's Tri-Pacer is sitting, this is in January now and the weather's really kind of crappy. And anyway, his neighbor was out flying, and he's never been particularly well known, but he was coming in straight at my neighbor's house, and she claims the weather was not too bad for January, but the pool was frozen over, and she saw him coming right at her. He kind of lost control of the airplane, hit it on the ground, and right through the front of their house, and hit a berm that's on the swimming pool, and bounced up into the air and down into the pool.
Was he landing or trying to take off?
Well, some debate about that, but we think he was landing. He never did say. So he runs out to the pool. There he is, trying to get out of the airplane down in the bottom of the pool. And he gets out okay, and he climbs up to the water. He says, "Say, do you have any garlic?" It's obviously that he had a few extra drinks or something. And anyway, Andy DeBrino pulled the airplane out, went and hired a hangar, pulled the airplane out of the pool. Didn't do too much damage to the airplane, as you can see, but it did bust the fence on the pool and put a cut into the diving board from the drop. And he pulls this airplane out, and the A&I comes down, so they'll hook it up so it won't be damaged on the pull-out. They swing it around and get it, and put it on the ground. There's ice in the wings, that's why it's tilted like that. And Andy pulls the thing back into his hangar and closes the door and turns the heat on to dry the airplane out. Well, the neighbor, the name should go unstated, was going to sue Andy and wouldn't pay him for the part of the crane because he claims that the water in his pool wrecked his airplane radios. Oh, for crying out loud. Andy couldn't hardly believe it. And but anyway, the guy finally got the airplane back, put it in his hangar. We went down to the FAA and said, we can't let that drunk fly in this neighborhood anymore. And the FAA pulled his license. And but he still took the airplane and put it inside his hangar. And he would fire that up in there and run it up high RPM and just blow junk all over his hangar and cut holes in his fabric. And our A&I, who would go over to his house, was trying to patch all the holes. So that was quite an experience. For that, having an airplane in your swimming pool.
Did that guy ever sell it, or to your knowledge, or did it ever fly again?
Ultimately, he committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years later. And obviously he was a messed up person. But that was an exciting year.
Oh, and then Mom learned how to fly.
Well, I bought her a lesson in a Cherokee out of Hillsboro, and when she was walking back out, the instructor said, "I think you ought to take some more time in the ground control lessons and so forth."
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that.
Well, she got her pinch hitting deal though.
Yeah,
which is important.
Yeah, and she could still. Yeah, she got to the point she could fly the airplane, the 310, pretty good. And one of the things about the 310 that I didn't mention in the earlier ones, but the door keeps popping open, and that's one of the weaknesses of the 310 is that way the door.
Well, the early model one for sure.
Yeah, the early model one.
Was it just the latch was just wimpy? Is that the deal with it?
Huh?
Because in the logbook there, I noticed that you'd had that thing pop on you twice in 1974.
Oh yeah, and one of the times it scared the passenger so bad I wouldn't get back in the airplane. It just popped open and make a lot of noise, and no way you could close. We had to fly the airplane down to the ground to, to get the door. That was a weak part of the airplane. But
well, and then a lot of people have had accidents due to that because they panic.
Yeah.
And
it just makes a lot of noise. It's not dangerous, and it doesn't change the flying aspect of the airplane. So,
you just got to make sure you be nice and calm and.
Yeah. Well, you realize that you're going to have to go back and land the airplane and close the door all the way, and you can't tell by the way they handle situations on that 310 if the thing's totally latched properly. And so the section of the air will pop it open if all it takes a couple bumps. But it happened 3 or 4 times, and so,
typically on takeoff, usually right after rotation.
Yeah. So.
Well, another eventful year, huh?
Yeah,
so we'll come
fun.
Back and talk about belly landings on the next episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be ready.